Old man doing a podcast. Real weirdos. We have English degrees. Real weirdos. We talk about movies for way too goddamn long. Welcome back, everybody, to the Reel Weirdos podcast. We hope you're doing okay today in this crazy-ass, stupid-ass world full of nonsense. Today is a weird one, actually, Alex.
Yeah,
It's weird for us. It might not look like the weirdest thing ever because these are pretty popular movies, but in terms of the things we like to talk about on this show, it's definitely weird. I guess we've done Batman, but we haven't done any like traditional superhero movies.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about Iron Man and then get into Morbius as well. For some fucking reason, we decided to add that onto this.
Yeah, we just tacked it on because it's been, making the rounds at all the theaters.
That's making the rounds. I think it's a good juxtaposition as well when you talk about why a superhero movie works versus why it doesn't. But before we get into that, we decided to do this because you have never seen a Marvel movie.
Yeah. Never from like start to finish. Always caught little glimpses here and there on TV. Never was super interested in the whole like the scene of all of them because I wasn't really into comics that much when I was a kid. But that isn't necessarily the only argument I have because, I mean, I watched Spider-Man, coming from Sam Raimi and everything. I watched the Nolan Batmans and I enjoyed both of those series a lot. So it wasn't like I was like totally allergic to superhero movies. It was more, I feel like all of a sudden they just opened the floodgates at the movie studios. And I mean, the people were asking for it, right? But it was like all of this nostalgia bombs just everywhere. And they were like, we're going to just pump all of this money and all of these fucking actors into these movies. And whether or not they're good, we don't care. That's what it seemed like. And
that's what it seemed like.
Yeah. So I think that Iron Man was like a really good way to start off because it is the first one, right? It's like the reintroduction of.
Yeah. So it is the first one. It is. It's interesting. It sort of operates in a space that is contradictory to what superhero movies are now, especially Marvel movies, in terms of where it came from. Because Marvel at the time, this was pre-Disney, like pre-Disney purchasing them.
Oh, okay.
And Marvel was sort of on the ropes financially. And they put a lot of what they had left into this production. And it was a sort of like flying by the seat of their pants production, hoping it would work. They only kind of had a script. They had like a storyboards, and they were doing the action. And a lot of the dialogue throughout the entire film is improvised, which I don't know how much of that occurs now. I think they're a little more free than you think. Like, I think there's a good amount of improv because these movies are generally quite funny a lot of the time, and it feels natural. But it wasn't taking over the world. It wasn't like in the position of having taken over the world as these Marvel movies are now.
Yeah,
it was almost like a $150 million student film that they just hoped would go somewhere, and fucking Robert Downey Jr. made it work essentially.
Yeah, I was gonna bring that up too. Because for me, he definitely was someone who was like very notorious for having a very mercurial and like troubled career in Hollywood. Not in Hollywood, excuse me, just personally,
Yeah, and massive drug problems.
Yeah. I mean, his career in Hollywood has always been pretty stellar. He's always been a pretty like well-respected actor and someone who I think takes the craft very seriously. But like most young actors, drugs take over everything. So then when he came back into this role, or when he came into the role and I heard he was going to be Iron Man, it like coincided with his kind of renaissance into the film world. Now, I'm sure that that's arguable. There's like films here and there that he probably was starting to come up in. But for me, it felt like this is him breaking onto the scene. And I asked you this a few weeks ago when we started the film, and you kind of alluded to it just now. What made this film? Like, what made it work so well? Was it Iron Man and, Paramount and Marvel just getting together and being like, hey, we're going to gamble on this? Or do you think that like Robert Downey Jr. is the one who really has a lot of the credit for bringing back this universe?
I think it was an interesting, audacious sort of project for Marvel. I mean, X-Men sort of opened the gates for superhero movies, but there weren't a lot of like big ones after that. There were a lot of junk ones, you know. Besides Spider-Man and Batman, there was like Daredevil with Affleck and Catwoman with Halle Berry, and all this like junk, and it was junk. And I don't know. It's an interesting question, and we may not be able to answer it, but I think Downey is a huge part of it.
Yeah,
he has to be. Like, it is the Downey movie. It's the Downeyest movie.
Yeah.
Even down to the last line of the film was improvised, which seems crazy. Where he does the Downey thing, you know, the Tony Stark thing, where he says, "I am Iron Man." You know, at that press conference, that was improvised. I don't know what the hell the original ending was, but it feels like it couldn't have been done any other way.
Dude, I think that, I found that little tidbit in my research as well. The fact that like pre-production was so focused on story and action shots that they told the actors like, hey, you guys can come up with almost like 90% of your dialogue.
I think it could have been good with another actor, but I think Downey just skyrocketed it.
I was going to say,
with his
like,
charisma.
He doesn't necessarily do anything to... None of the actors that are cast in the roles of the actual superheroes, when they're wearing the masks and shit, like, whatever, everyone can do that. It's when they're playing their alter egos, right? And Tony Stark is, like, iconic now. I mean, Robert Downey Jr.'s Tony Stark is iconic. Before... no one gave a fuck who Tony Stark was. I'm sorry, but like Bruce Wayne, Peter Parker were the big alter egos. You know, maybe the Hulk one, I forget his name. But it's like...
You're right.
It's like Tony Stark just all of a sudden became this character. Men around America and around the globe started to emulate and mimic his mannerisms and just his like lifestyle goals. It's insane. Like, he created a cultural icon as an alter ego for a superhero.
So, what did you think of Iron Man?
Okay.
Because you'd never... It's interesting that you never even saw, even though you're a big Downey fan, right?
Yeah.
So, like, having now finally popped your Marvel cherry... I should also say, sort of the impetus for this is that we've talked about Marvel movies sort of laterally a lot of the time, just because it's impossible to avoid them. And I've ended up being more of a defender of them than I would have anticipated on this podcast, because I do like these movies generally. I think they're usually pretty well done. They're fun. They have good characters. They're just solid movies. I'm by no means like a fanboy. I don't usually see these movies in theaters. I don't care that much, but like I've become sort of their aegis on this podcast.
Yeah. No, I rejected the culture wholesale, I think, which led to me rejecting the art, which is never a good thing to do, right? I mean, I did the same thing with Stephen King for a really long time with his books. But yeah, I mean, it's always that thing where you meet the fanboys or you meet the fangirls or something like that. The people whose whole personality are just, you know, centered around the movie that they just saw. And it's like the constant notifications that I would get on my phone, or like the constant like badgering of like, who do you think is going to play this person, or did you hear that this person's going to play this person? And I was like,
or the entire cottage industry of like speculation on YouTube where it's like, let's look at all the details and figure out, and you're like, and it's all in capital letters. So that's not our show. We don't fucking do that. We're not interested in that. That's not us. I just think that these are good movies.
I had to swim through all of that bias, you know.
It does have its own, like, we can talk about the effect that it has on the film industry at some point here, but for now, I guess we'll just still focus on just the Iron Man. I loved curious about your experience, you know?
Dude, I loved it. You're right about it being like, it's fun. It's the perfect pace. I feel like it pushes the limits of superhero silliness just enough, which is okay. Yes, it was believable to me that Tony Stark and his friend Yinsen, you know, built this thing like to kind of escape. Like my imagination was able to like grasp on to that, you know. There's some other things in the movie that we're going to talk about later in Morbius that I'm just like, even with someone who's as crazy of an imagination that I have, I just couldn't get on board. So I think it rides this line of like a fun adventure. Like, I don't know. It almost felt like
it's like Indiana Jones.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. Like it felt like a
Really?
a legitimized superhero version of Indiana Jones, right? I didn't necessarily really buy into like the romance part, but that was more of my just issues with Gwyneth Paltrow. I loved Jeff Bridges' character though. So yeah, I mean,
you did get burned when you bought all those Goop products.
I know, I did actually. I still have some. If anyone wants any discounts that are listening, just enter code EGG into the Reel Weirdos website.
Yeah, we'll send you some discount Goop.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. I had a thought. I've seen this movie a fucking million times since 2008, you know.
Now, is it the best
It's a
one?
weird... the best Iron Man?
Yeah, that's what I meant. Sorry.
See, that's a hard question. There's 3 of them. The second one has more problems than this one. The third one's really good.
Okay.
But it's also like it's hard to differentiate an Iron Man movie when like all the Avengers movies are also Iron Man movies.
Yeah.
There's some of the Captain America movies are basically Avengers movies, so it has Iron Man. And like Tony Stark is in a lot of the movies and he's the main draw. Like these other characters are pretty good.
Yeah.
But nobody has the charisma and the like draw for your eye that Tony Stark does.
Oh, I know.
And it's inextricable from Downey. You know, you couldn't have any other actor do it now.
No, I know. And I think that like it's like the perfect example of doing the dice roll and just hitting it perfectly, right? Like for all the D&D nerds out there, like they rolled a nat 20 on this. Like fucking let's just try it. Let's just see if like this is gonna, you know, revive. It's not even necessarily to like revive the studio, but they see the potential in something like superheroes, right? And the wide universe that you can draw from. And they're like, please let us be the ones to make this work. Please. Because once someone else gets it, like,
they broke the game.
Oh, dude. Like, holy shit, man.
They broke the world. They changed the game. Yeah, and on the topic of like it being an Indiana Jones style adventure, this time I almost looked at it as like a really high budget B movie.
Okay.
Like it has that sort of aesthetic to it where it's like it is popcorny and like kind of junky.
Oh,
in a way.
yeah,
I don't know. It has
that,
this
though.
really strange tone where but it takes itself seriously enough while having fun with their material. And that's a point about Marvel as well, where a lot of those DC movies have failed horribly, is having a consistent tone that's like lighthearted. It knows how seriously to take itself, but doesn't sort of go overboard usually.
Yeah.
Unless it's like, unless that's sort of the point, which is like Guardians of the Galaxy kind of thing.
Well, I was going to say, you know, like Nolan and Raimi's series of Spider-Man and Batman, they kind of like, they almost suffocated you with seriousness. And like
not Raimi's, man. Those movies are corny as hell.
Sorry, not Sam Raimi. I was talking about Christopher Nolan and fucking not Spider-Man. Who am I thinking? Wolverine, X-Men. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
I was like, those movies are just like they're front loaded with this really heavy, serious tone. But I always liked superhero movies like, excuse me now, Spider-Man, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, and then this one. That have this like almost jovial like attitude. It doesn't like take itself so seriously, except in the situations that it really like needs to. And I feel like it was refreshing because like I'm still getting old with it of like the super serious dark superhero that takes themselves so seriously.
We just did that new Batman movie, for fuck's sake.
And I get that, right? Like, I get how dark it is and everything. But it was cool to see Robert Downey Jr. especially, like, inject the film with this kind of, like, jubilance or this, like, activity that made it... I feel like setting it in California, too, honestly, I was going to bring that up, helped that immensely. You're not in this dark, Gotham-y, like, rainy city or anything like that. And I loved that it was like sunshine and like it just looked different. tonally than other superhero movies as well. So, yeah, man.
Yeah, it wasn't dark. It wasn't miserable. It wasn't Man of Steel.
Yeah.
You have really great characterization where he's kind of an asshole at the beginning, but you still like him because he just has that natural charisma.
Yeah.
And you have Robert Downey Jr. apparently ad-libbing these really fucking funny lines, which just bolsters my idea that, you know, Tony Stark is basically just Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah, right.
Like, they're
I know.
pretty inseparable.
I know.
It's just that's his personality. This is not a hot take, by the way.
No, not at all.
Y'all know this out there.
I was watching
Y'all know
Scanner
this.
Darkly, and I was like, or I was watching Iron Man, and I was like, this is like fucking. He's like the same character. He's just rich now and legitimate.
I know,
like,
right? A little bit less like twacked out,
manic.
but
yeah,
a little bit less manic. Yeah. But yeah, man, and I think I'm glad that you enjoyed it. And it's weird because I don't want to, like, I don't know. It feels weird to be like hawking Marvel movies to you or to anybody because there's so much going on in cinema that's not superhero movies, but it's, I don't know, it felt like we just had to do this.
yeah. And I also
We had to break your cherry.
Yeah, I know, right? It was like, for me, I think that after all the like riff-raff and ribble-rabble is settled, you know, when people are like, no, this is the greatest movie ever, and I'm like, no, this movie fucking sucks. After all that dust is settled, and I can kind of just go back to these films like 14-ish, 15-year-ish years later, I can like actually watch them and critically analyze them and give them a chance, right? Because I have to give them a chance before I rag on them. I'm sure if we continue this Marvel journey, I'm going to crash into a few obstacles here and there and be like, I can't do this movie because it sucks. But this one was like perfect popcorn, like sit down Friday night movie. Like I just wanted something like that, and I needed it.
Exactly. That's what they are. That's what they are, pretty much. They get a little more serious or a little more silly. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they work better than others. But generally, like, if I'm going to watch all of them, like, if I'm going to go through the whole storyline, I'll watch all of them. There's not any I really skip. That being said, I haven't watched any since Endgame. I think it kind of became over for me once it felt like the whole arc was concluded. I haven't seen any of the new ones. I'm sure I will.
Like the Spider-Man ones considered the continuations or the new ones?
Yeah. There's a whole bunch, man.
Okay.
It keeps going. There's multiple a year. The Spider-Mans. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Doctor Strange too. Fuck. I see. That's another thing. The multiverse thing is hard to keep up with.
Yeah, I don't really know what's going on at this point. Like I said, the last one I watched was Endgame, which was 2018 or 19.
Okay.
But yeah, it's, I don't know if we will continue this journey. We'll find out.
Yeah.
It's I kind of want to.
I mean,
I think it'd be fun,
this, right? Like,
but at the same time, it's like there's so much other stuff to talk about. Maybe we just do it every once in a while.
Just sprinkle it in there.
Or we do like 3 at a time. Something like that. I don't know. Well, we'll talk about that ourselves, but so did you find any flaws in the movie, like, that are worth noting?
I mean, not necessarily. I'm trying to think. I didn't really like Terrence Howard's character that much.
He gets replaced by Don Cheadle.
That's what I was figuring. That's what I was
going
wondering,
forward,
right? Because I've
There's a lot
seen
more
Don
charisma
Cheadle in it, and I know that Terrence Howard has his own issues, and like he's kind of off the deep end. I don't know if you've gone into like that.
No, I have no idea.
Terrence Howard has this belief that he calls, I think it's called Howardology or something.
What?
Dude, it's like he thinks he's like
Is this Jared Leto we're talking about? What the fuck?
He should have been in Morbius, right? That would have just like created a black hole with all of the ego in that studio.
Oh my God.
But no, like he has this belief that he has a different way of looking at math, and he thinks the way that math has been taught to us over these millennia is just wrong. So I'll let you whenever.
Math?
After the podcast.
Okay.
Go into it.
Fucking yeah. Let's put that aside. That's some nonsense.
But I'm trying to think. You know, I do generally like Jon Favreau as a director. There are some films he's made that I like think he's just like phoning it in, and it's like, give me an Oscar, and I don't like that. But this one, I thought was like thought it was really
it's
cool.
pretty perfect.
It
right?
showed that he wasn't like pessimistic about it. It wasn't cynical like a cash grab. Like you said, they weren't in a position where they could do something like that, right? So when they hired him and he came on board, it showed like that he actually had a passion for the material and that he liked it and things like that.
Yeah, it wasn't designed like from the ground up in a boardroom where every line of dialogue is like looked at by a team of lawyers and like diversity specialists. Being like, we have to have an Asian in this scene now because you're Disney, essentially. It's like it is like $150 million student film where they improvise dialogue.
Yeah.
It's crazy. One of my biggest problems with it is just like the fact that he like the big fight at the end is he has to fight a guy in a bigger Iron Man suit. But to your point about it being like a Friday night popcorn kind of thing, it's almost like I don't really analyze the flaws in these movies that deeply.
Yeah.
Because they operate in that way. It's like I'm just happy to have movies that work like that for me, like new movies, because a lot of these new movies don't, a lot of these sequels and stuff are fucking garbage. They're just banking on nostalgia. We've talked about this. Everyone has talked about this. Everyone knows what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom just came out, Yeah. Everyone's talking about this shit. And it's like those movies that you put on when you're 15 and you're like, yes, like just a fun movie with good characters, pretty good script, like things make sense, they're well structured, well acted, it's fun. Like these are those movies of this era.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that there are more, but not as consistent as this. It only becomes a problem, and I think it's only a problem for people because they're so big. No.
Yeah, and they're so invested in the material, right?
I don't know if it's the investment that people have a problem with. I think people see it as a detriment to real cinema.
Oh, that's what you meant. I see what you're saying.
Yeah, which, I don't know. I can see the argument, but at the same time, it's like, what do you want
right
now? Do you want reality to change?
Yeah,
it is what it is. There are still a lot of great movies. They're just not coming out in theaters. I personally don't fucking care about that at all because I'm pretty done with theaters.
Yeah.
Which is its own conversation, but...
No, I know, man. But you're right, because it's like... I think the most apparent thing, the most bothersome thing is the ones that are just like overtly cynical cash grabs, right? Which is the facade has kind of shimmered away in the past decade. Like it's almost gotten to the point now where they're like, we're just going to keep fucking making these movies. Like, I don't know where
it's very transparent, cynical. Yeah.
So when you start,
and Marvel movies might be too at this point. I know that people have a lot of problems with a lot of the newer ones. Once again, I have not seen those. I'm speaking specifically just through Endgame.
Yeah. It's almost become like, it almost feels like a genre now where young directors can go or old directors can go to kind of like stretch their limbs out or like cut their teeth a little bit, right? Like you're a young director, you're coming up, you've made a drama, you've made a few black comedies or something like that. I don't fucking know. And then all of a sudden a producer's like, hey, do you want to try your hand at the superhero game? These things make us a lot of fucking money. They can make you a lot of fucking money. And it's a good way to like, test your range out. And it almost seems like on your resume now, it's like, oh yeah, I got a superhero flick under my belt. And that's
weird.
It's an important thing to have almost in Hollywood. It's not like they're giving these movies to like be directors, These are big time directors.
They are though. So this is an interesting thing that you brought up here. Like that you brought this up. Because while you do have people like Sam Raimi, who just did the newest, speaking of Spider-Man, he did the newest Doctor Strange. You had Kenneth Branagh did the original Thor, which is weird. You had like the director of The Rocketeer, I can't remember his name at the moment, did Captain America. But
oh really?
On the flip side of that, you have what they'll do is like they'll find a director who made like an indie drama, and then just grab them and have them make fucking Spider-Man. It's $200 million movie, and I don't really understand it. I think it's because it might be a control thing, right?
Okay.
Where you don't want a director who has an established like style because then they won't be a yes man.
Yeah, that's true, actually.
Edgar Wright was actually going to make the first Ant-Man film, but he clashed with the studio when they were like, no, you can't just do what you want, basically.
Really?
Like, you have to do what we want.
Okay.
So I think they tend to hire people who don't have a style, because they're just there to get things done.
Got it.
They're not there to be a director, if you get what I mean.
Yeah. No, I know
because
what you're saying.
I think a lot of these movies, now that they're so big and they've been bought by Disney, and they have all these worries about everything.
Yeah.
Like how everything is going to be perceived.
It's like a machine now, almost. Like they just put people into spots.
Yeah, it's both, right?
Yeah.
You have Sam Raimi as well. I don't know how much creative control he had. Yeah, it's just interesting. I don't really know what to say about it other than that. And there's multiple sides to it. It's complicated. It's weird. Like we talked about last week, the process of movie making is crazy.
Oh, yeah.
It is difficult at this point, though, to sort of think that these movies aren't directed by a boardroom.
I know. That is true. I mean, I'll probably see that later on when we get more in depth into this journey.
But then at the same time, you have the Guardians movies, which feel like fucking James Gunn movies. And they're great.
I forgot to bring this up, actually.
It's weird.
While I was talking about the tone of this film, it being a little brighter and like more jovial, I think this film actually it brought in this character, the main character, that was like kind of stylistic. He was like polished. He was like really deft and like really charismatic. I feel like, being so inexperienced with superhero movies, this might be a stretch, but I'm just going to throw it out there that this film kind of opened the door for films like Guardians of the Galaxy to come through. Like, I could see Gunn at home watching this movie, right? And being like, fuck, it can be done. Like, I don't have to make all these things all broody and dark and everything like that. So, I don't know. It's a cool little, like, gift, I guess, to the superhero world. And showing us that it doesn't have to be all like broken and like, I mean, he is broken. Tony Stark is broken, but I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Well, Guardians is part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Got
it. But the tone you're picking up on here is a big part of why I like these films, because they get the tone right. Like I keep saying, it has good characters. It knows when to take itself seriously and when to have fun, and it strikes a good balance.
Yeah.
And it's a perfect movie balance, because it's like, you're not making Titan here, you're not making Platoon or fucking Saving Private Ryan or something. These are movies.
Yeah,
they're movies.
I was gonna say,
they're there to have fun. Yeah,
even the science wasn't like too crazy. It was perfect movie superhero science, right? It wasn't. It was. I don't know. There are some films.
It gets bonkers later, but
okay. Well,
it's kind of like whatever.
I mean, the electromagnetic thing in his chest at the beginning, right? I was like, cool, that's fine. Like, I'm totally into that. Again, like I said, the building of the robot with like just the materials that you have, trying to keep it secret and everything.
Yeah, it's good. I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah, I'm glad I watched it.
Maybe you'll watch more. Maybe we will watch more. We'll have to think about how to structure that, But so to tack onto this, we decided to watch fucking Morbius as well. Which feels like the antithesis to this.
It does, actually.
Because it feels like the most cynical thing ever and the most generic thing ever, where contrary to Tony Stark and Robert Downey Jr. elevating the material through his performance and just like natural charisma, you have Jared Leto there, who is just a fucking charisma vacuum.
Seriously.
He's so unlikable.
Yeah.
In reality. So,
yeah.
Alex, why do we watch Morbius? Why do we watch Morbius? What's your take on this?
Well,
now that we've seen it.
The reason that I felt like I needed to bring it up or talk about it was not only my undying hatred for Jared Leto, but also...
Is it hatred?
I guess it's not really a hatred. I mean, he's great in Dallas Buyers Club. Just as a person, I think he's so fucking weird. Like, he has a cult, apparently. The things I've heard about him trying to get into his, like, method acting role, I'm like, that isn't method acting, right? Like, method acting is like...
No, it's being a cunt.
Exactly.
That's what it's called.
Like,
yeah.
There's a very... It's not even a fine line. The line is pretty thick, and it's easy to step over it. And so, I don't know. I've never really liked that aspect about him. But talking about the film culture of superhero movies and, like, the buzz that is created, people would not stop talking about this movie. On the internet, in real life, memes abound everywhere. Like, I didn't understand what was going on.
Even though nobody saw it.
Yeah, and then it comes back around in theaters a second time, and now they're rallying to get it back in theaters a third time.
Are they really going to try for number 3?
Yeah, the internet knows no bounds with its craziness and its, like, weird, dark humor, right?
Okay. So, yeah, this movie came out. It was a massive flop, both financially and critically. Like, nobody likes this movie.
Yeah.
If you like this movie, then I don't know what species you are. I really don't. It is fucking awful. This movie is fucking awful. It's the second worst thing we've ever watched on this show.
Oh, easy.
Next to Matrix.
Yeah.
But yeah, for Jared Leto, it is interesting, right? So I only dug into this last year when you and some other friends were talking about him, and I was like, what's the deal with this cult thing?
Yeah.
I know that he has a band that I do not like, 30 Seconds to Mars. I think that they're kind of just generic and easily digestible. But yeah, the whole cult thing, he's weird. And he's weird in a way that doesn't translate unless you're unless you're drinking the Kool-Aid, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of actors who have a cult of personality. And this is why it's interesting to talk about Leto in the same sort of conversation as Downey, because he's the anti-Downey. Downey is just fucking likable. He just is. Even if he's an asshole, it doesn't matter. He just has this natural charisma. Jared Leto, I guess, does to some people, but it's very strange to me because it doesn't feel genuine. There's something very disingenuous about him as a person that just gives me like a weird feeling, like a kind of gross feeling about him.
No, I get that.
He does these weird like festivals where he like owns an island, and he has fans of his band come out, and you can like win a chance to sleep next to him, and he dresses like Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And I guess he acknowledges the sort of cult thing by like they have t-shirts that say yes, it's a cult. So they're kind of like tongue in cheek doing it, but it still feels pretty culty. He's really fucking creepy to women. You can see this in many. Just look up Jared Leto being creepy on YouTube, and you'll just see it. He's very in love with himself, and I don't know. He can be a good actor. He can also be terrible.
Yeah, I will say he does have quite a bit of I mean, he's a handsome guy. He looks young. He's like a very youthful looking actor. So
dude, it's crazy that he's like 52.
Dude, it's crazy to think how far back you can go and find little bits of Jared Leto, right? Because you see Jared Leto in Joker, or in Suicide Squad, excuse me, and you see him in Blade Runner 2049. And you're like, oh, here's this like 30-year-old like kind of creepy actor dude. And then you can pop in American Psycho and see like 1990s Christian Bale and shit like that, and he's right there, and he looks the exact same. And then you can go to 98.
The Thin Red Line, man.
He's in Thin Red Line. He's in Fight Club, for fuck's sake. Like, by the way, one of the best
That's his
movie
best
lines.
Performance, because he gets beaten in the face by Edward Norton.
One of the best movie lines. Too fucking blonde. When he's standing on the porch. And that guy's just like, you can't be here. You're too fucking blonde.
Fucking blonde.
Yeah. So he's like, it's weird because he's just been around for so long, and I totally get what you mean by the genuine thing, though. Like, even when he's acting, I'm like, you're so self-aware of how like cool this makes you look. Like, that it bleeds into your roles. The only role, like I will say, that I thought he did amazing in was Dallas Buyers Club. Like, he was so good in that movie. Like, there was a scene he was in that like got me, like I was like suffocating almost because it was so intense. But after that, it's just been like, I don't know, all of this weird shit. And like, I will say, I don't think that Morbius is all of his fault, but casting him was kind of a really bad choice.
Plus,
Plus, he threw a
help.
tantrum about the Joker thing, which I thought was really fucking stupid.
Well, you're right about it. Almost feels like a stink comes off of him when you're watching him in a movie. You put it really well a minute ago, where it's like you can just feel that he thinks he's so awesome.
Yeah.
And it like overwhelms the performance. It creates like a musk. It's almost like you can smell it and you're like, fuck you.
Yeah.
Go away.
I know.
And yeah, I don't buy it. I don't buy that you're the second coming of Jesus. I think you're an acceptable actor. You're not an interesting human in my book.
Yeah.
But it just comes down to being so in love with yourself.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I'm sure other actors are, but it's a special case with him. And you can see that in Morbius. We can jump into Morbius here.
Yeah.
Oh my fucking God, Alex.
I know.
This movie was interminable.
Dude.
It was generic. It was soulless. It was no fun at any moment. It was poorly structured. The dialogue was fucking awful to the point where I cannot believe somebody wrote some of these lines. They had to have been bad improv. It had no character to latch onto. Michael Morbius was a fucking flat line. But what did you think about it, my friend? Did you like Morbius?
No, this movie. No, this movie is really, really, really bad. Just bad all around. The dialogue, like it. If anyone heard me talking about the dialogue in Batman, like whoever wrote the dialogue in Batman compared to this movie is fucking Shakespeare. Like that movie, like this movie is just, I don't know, every aspect about it. If we want to go to like how big it is to make a film and even more so to make a superhero film, every single aspect of this movie felt like it was chosen by a boardroom, right? Like even the editing, the dialogue, the casting, the acting, everything is just so bad. And you know what's funny is that the critics kind of called it, you know, from like way off. When the trailer came out, you have one critic, Julia Alexander from The Verge. She just said it looked ridiculous. And then there was another person, Matt Goldberg, who felt it looked silly. Now, I think that the goal here, when I was watching the movie, they were trying to like cash in on another like Venom type character, right?
Oh my God, the end when
dude.
they try to shoehorn in the Spider-Man is embarrassing.
Oh, it's disgusting.
It is fucking embarrassing. This whole movie's embarrassing. It is silly. It's laughably silly, but at the same time, it takes itself way too seriously. I have a shitload of notes on this movie. Yeah, comparing it to Iron Man. Let's do it. I mean, that's sort of why we did this. The Iron Morbius episode.
Yeah.
The contradiction here.
So, the movie science in this film and the way that it pushes my like imaginary boundaries, like Iron Man did, it was so ridiculous, dude. Even in the context of like the superhero film thing, it was like, we've talked about this before with Jiu-Jitsu, the film with Nick Cage starring the stuntman as an actor.
Right.
It's like it was written by like a 10-year-old or something, right? Like this was like the storyboarded by like a group of young boys who meet in like the treehouse every week and are just
he can't walk, so he puts the vampire bat DNA into the human DNA, and then he becomes a vampire.
Exactly. Like,
and you're like, dude, I'll give a pass to Spider-Man being bitten by a radioactive spider because that came out in 1932 and was like made for children at the time. It's like whatever. Every one of those Marvel ones are like, someone fell into a vat of scorpion and now they are the scorpion. It's like whatever. It was a very different era.
I know, right?
You know?
Like,
but no, this is lazy on a whole new level.
Yeah.
In terms of screenwriting.
I was like happy to watch characters die on screen. I was like, good, get rid of that person. I don't want to see him anymore. Like as characters started to slowly leave and go away, I was like, oh, thank God. I don't know. This movie is way too long. I think it's about 50 minutes too long, which would bring my running time to 64 or 54 minutes, which I think would be perfect.
Minutes, yeah.
But yeah, man, this movie is trash.
It's almost hard to start picking it apart, because when you want to talk about what fails with it, the answer is everything. But we can go through my notes here, and that'll just spur up some discussion here. Speaking of the dialogue, which is just appallingly generic or savagely unfunny, I have some lines written down. I'm hungry. You wouldn't like me when I'm hungry. Of course, a play on the Hulk. You wouldn't like me when I'm angry, but with no charisma or anything. The characterization of Michael Morbius is problematic.
Yes.
Because in someone like Tony Stark, right? Even though he's an asshole, like we've said, he has that panache, he has a charisma. And you see throughout the course of the movie that he learns to be heroic and he develops a conscience. With Michael Morbius, there's none of that.
No.
He starts out, you have to be told by other characters in expository dialogue that's very poorly written that Michael Morbius cares about people. He's a doctor. He's such a cool doctor, in fact, that he turns down the Nobel Prize.
I know.
Which, fuck you. But the point here is that even if you're making a superhero movie that's about an anti-hero, they still have to do something heroic. Something. Anything. Michael Morbius does nothing for anybody in this film. I guess he, like, I don't know. Him and Matt Smith's relationship is stupid and bad.
Is that Milo?
That is Milo.
Yeah, no, that's fucking
Doctor
stupid.
Who.
Stupid.
They're set up in one scene as kids with, once again, just laughably generic dialogue to be best buddies forever.
I know.
Because they have the same blood problem.
Right? There's like nothing to latch onto with Michael Morbius. Like,
there is nothing.
It's
He's
like
hateful.
That line that you spoke of just now, you know, the you wouldn't like me when I'm hungry thing. So that's an example right there of a film studio or a director, whoever's in charge, looking at something like Iron Man and seeing the quippy, funny, deft dialogue between its character actors or its main character and its other character actors, and then being like, that's what we need. We need to replicate that somehow. And when a studio gets its hands on something, that essence, and tries to replicate that in the most generic and cynical way, this is what you get. You get Michael Morbius saying stupid little lines like, you wouldn't like me when I'm hungry. And
dude, when he breaks the guy's hand and he says this line, he says, 6 to 8 weeks, ibuprofen. You can just smell Jared Leto's farts. And like him loving his own farts.
Because he's a doctor, right? Like,
it's just the way he says it, that line.
Yeah.
I was like, I hate this character. It doesn't even feel like a character. It just feels like Jared Leto thinking he's cool.
Yeah.
You know, there's almost no characterization beyond expository dialogue. People being like, "You're a good man, Michael. You wouldn't hurt anybody. I don't believe you'd ever hurt anyone."
I know, it's like they never showed me anything to show that he was like overwhelmingly a good person, right? Like, oh, he has a surrogate brother who he names. He gives him a pet name, and they like have a shared blood disease or whatever. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like that's the story for millions of people all around the world. You find, you know, misery and company, whatever. Like I don't know why that makes sense.
Alex, he's a doctor.
Yeah, I know. Like,
and he has millions of dollars to the point where he can rent cruise ships to do experiments on. I don't know where he gets his resources, by the way. I guess because he's the preeminent rock star scientist of the world.
Yeah,
who turns down Nobel Prizes,
turning it down and shit, and just like, I don't know. I thought that the whole scenes between him and the agents, the FBI agents, or not like the scenes
cops?
Between them, but like the way that they unraveled like the mystery of trying to find out what was going on and everything. It was just all so low stakes. This movie was like low stakes everything. Like I was never like,
because it doesn't matter.
I know, nothing matters.
There's no like nothing matters. It all hinges upon the nexus that is Michael Morbius. It assumes that you care about him and him surviving, and you care about like his like juxtaposition with the Matt Smith character, who just becomes a mustache twirling villain at the drop of a hat. Is like, and you're like, this is just so dumb, and nothing matters. You don't like the characters. There's no stakes. for anything else, I guess, like, so they could stop these vampire guys from eating people on the streets, but I don't know.
Even
Whatever.
like his superpowers didn't really make sense to me.
He has
strength.
They just wrote things
speed,
in. Yeah, he has strength.
reflexes.
He can summon bats at the end.
They're
It's not explained.
They're like, okay, we have to put one thing that bats can do. Okay, do the echolocation thing. And I'm like, all right. Like, but I didn't know that bats were notorious for being like super speedy, reflexive, and like strong, animals. So like the Spider-Man thing makes perfect sense, because Spider-Man can climb now on the side of buildings like a spider can, and he can shoot these like webs from his wrists, right? He doesn't turn into a spider himself. Whereas Morbius is like, he like can summon bats. Bats treat him like they're part of all of the same family. And then he has like all of these other things. And I'm like, again, a 10-year-old who's like, well, he's a superhero, so he has to be super strong. Well, he also has to be super fast. And it's just like, oh my God.
He can heal. He's got Wolverine powers.
Yeah, like
it feels like the worst Underworld sequel.
Do you think this film would have done better in the Twilight era, like the vampires galore era?
Maybe. Speaking of things that are horribly dated and boring, there's the action scenes, which inexplicably have these like trails coming off of Michael Morbius, I guess because they thought it looked cool, but there's no logic to it. And they also do this speed up, slow down, Zack Snyder-y 300 thing, which has been dated for 10 years now. Nobody does that anymore because it looks bad. It looks old. It looks stupid. And they don't even do it to punctuate like a cool moment of action. It just sort of happens. The action scenes in this movie were so fucking boring.
Yes.
I didn't even realize an action scene was happening one time when he's like fighting Matt Smith underground or something until it was almost all over because my brain was just like thinking about laundry. I don't know. It was so boring.
Dude, and to compare it again to Iron Man, Jon Favreau and the crew did such a good job of making me care about the characters. I actually, in real life, I probably might relate more or engage more with the story about some crazy doctor, like scientist who's like trying to cure some disease, rather than I would some weird weapons manufacturer rich boy, But the way that they've presented them, I would much rather hang out with Tony Stark. I'd much rather engage in a movie and cinematic world where I get to deal with those characters and that whole world than anyone from Morbius ever again. Because I just don't. There was nothing there in Morbius to make me care about anything that was going on. Even the fight scenes. I didn't care if he won or lost. It was just movement on the screen. But no. Go into your slow motion thing. Exactly. That was, I think, what pissed me off the most about the film. Because when you do that, it shows that you're taking yourself very seriously. But it was just so it's just so stale.
It feels like a boardroom full of totally misguided, out-of-touch people trying to make a superhero movie.
Yeah, which is hard in this
plugging
day and
in
age.
these elements, but failing at all of them. Okay. Speaking of another thing, which is Robert Downey Jr. plugging in all these lines into the film and making the film great.
Yeah.
Through his just ad-libbing. I feel like this movie tried to do that. There's one of the cops specifically irritated the absolute shit out of me in lines that I have to believe were ad-libbed because nobody could write this. I refuse to believe that even a fucking 10-year-old could write something this bad. He walks into the apartment. They're looking for, I don't know, what's her face, the doctor lady, and he grabs the kitty litter box, shakes it, and says, "Here, kitty, kitty, kitty," like a cat is going to be summoned by you shaking a litter box.
What?
And then 1.5 seconds later, he makes the brilliant deduction without looking throughout the apartment at all. Oh, the cat's gone. She must be gone with it. And I'm sitting there with my mouth open and the mouth of my brain open going what the fuck? What are you fucking talking about, movie? What is this?
Yeah.
Are you human? It was so weird, Alex.
No, that guy's a bat too. He has echolocation as well. Like,
and then like they're counting like dead bodies on the street, and he's equating it to beers. He's like he drank the blood of 36 people, and so he says, "When was the last time you had 36 beers?" to his partner, which doesn't make sense because blood is food. It's not beer. And then he says to his friend, "When was the last time you had any beers?" I'm like, what the fuck is happening? What is happening? What are you talking about? Is this supposed to be like some comment on the fact that his friend doesn't have fun? But the whole none of the dialogue makes any fucking sense.
it's like
it
an AI writing that screenplay, right? Like it's like a human going to a computer and being like, I
could not translate it.
2 adults to have small talk. And then the computer just spits out like, no, I remember that scene that you were talking about. I don't know. I feel like if they continue this into Venom and Spider-Man and everything.
Well, Spider-Man is part of the Marvel universe, and those movies are well handled. Venom is crap, but at least it has Tom Hardy, and his charisma still comes through even if the movie fails.
Yeah.
And everything else, it's at least like has something. This has nothing.
It's very unfunny too. I want to point out this movie when it tries to.
That's what I'm saying.
Like, because it's not. You don't even know a joke is being told. Like the scene you were just describing, right? You're just like,
no, it just confuses you. Yeah. It either confuses you or makes you angry. He's looking at the screen at one point. He sees Matt Smith, and he's like, "That's what these bloodsuckers do. They multiply." And you're like, "How do you know that? What are you talking about? Why are there only 2 cops that are like in this whole city going after a fucking vampire outbreak?" What are you talking about, movie? It's so infuriating. So confusing. So bad. It's so fucking bad.
Yeah.
It was honestly unbelievable. This can't be a story that anyone wanted to tell, right?
No. I mean, it's turned it into a meme, and it turned into a meme so quickly. And it's funny because you don't even have a camp, like a loud camp of people like defending it. It's not like an internet war between one camp defending Morbius and another camp not defending it. It's like everyone's just like, oh no, this all sucks. Like
that happened with the DC movies, Zack Snyder's movies. Yeah.
Oh, it did? Okay. So
yeah.
One of my favorite things that I've seen that's come out of this is like a misattributed quote to Martin Scorsese.
Okay.
That said that he previously
Morbin
declared
time.
That superhero movies are not cinema, but he's changed his mind after seeing Morbius. And I'm like, this movie has gotten so fucking bad. And I don't know. Even Leto has gotten into the jokes now. He tweeted a thing where he was just like...
he killed the meme.
Yeah,
the meme is dead now.
Exactly.
Jared Leto.
And that's what I'm saying.
Jared Leto thinks it's cool to jump on the bandwagon.
Just a cynical cash grab from the beginning. It's so unbelievably bad and such an indicative symbol of the part of the superhero movie culture that we're talking about that we hate, that we had to talk about it. Because it's the perfect like metric... like litmus test for the difference, and Iron Man as well on the other end of the spectrum. They're like the perfect litmus test for how superhero movies can or cannot work. So
yeah, it is joyless, it is soulless, it's generic, it's bafflingly unfunny, it has nothing.
So
there is like 0% artistry here. Not even the sets are interesting.
Apparently it was right? Let's go back to that really quick. The movie is very, very... It's not necessarily ugly. It's just not pretty in any way. The tone color is like the same throughout the whole film.
Yeah, the color palette sucks.
The sets are just so generic. They're like, we need them to be standing inside of a room. And you're just like, okay. Like, put up some drywall. Like, everything is just so bad and plain. But... going back to my point, I forgot what I was fucking saying. Damn it.
Superhero movies. The juxtaposition. Iron Man.
Yeah.
Morbius. It's the most generic thing ever.
Yeah, I feel like I was...
Yeah.
It's just so like... Oh, okay. One thing that I saw in my research that actually kind of intrigued me was that apparently there have been many times to try and bring this film to screens. And 1998, there was an idea that they were going to have it join the Blade franchise. And I think that if they had done that, then it could have come off maybe different. It could have been cooler. Please don't do it now. Like, don't bring it back into the new Blade or whatever. But
if this movie was Blade 4 and you had Wesley Snipes hunting down Jared Leto,
yeah,
that could have been, and you had a real filmmaker at the helm, that could have been fun.
It would have fit into the nice late 90s, early 2000s, like action kind of Blade, like horror movie, right? Like, that was cool. That's fine. But now, the way that they did it now is just so boring, unprovoking. Like, it doesn't move the meter for me at all in any way.
Dude, it's the flattest movie I've seen in quite some time.
Easily
it elicited
of this year.
Nothing.
Yeah.
It elicited nothing except moments of confusion over dialogue, where I was like, "What?"
Yeah.
And that's it. Who directed this piece of crap?
Daniel Espinosa.
Daniel Espinosa. Let's see. Known for... Oh, he directed Life. Life is actually okay. It's like it's like an alien. It's like an alien movie, like the movie Alien.
Okay.
Kind of thing, but with Jake Gyllenhaal. I don't remember much about it, but it was okay. Yeah, I wonder if this is his fault or not. It kind of feels like it can't be. It's probably the studio's fault. I don't know. It felt like scenes were missing. Just the whole logic of everything. I could go on. I could go on talking about scenes in this movie, but I don't want to. No one wants to hear it either. You guys know Morbius is fucking terrible.
Yeah. I think if there was one thing I have to say, or could possibly say that I maybe liked about it, I didn't think Matt Smith was that bad.
He did fine with what he had.
Right? Like he did. It's like going back to what's his face in Dungeon Siege, Matthew Lillard. Fuck it.
Yeah, you just chew the scenery as a comic book villain with no depth.
Exactly. And
you just do what you can with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it is absolutely indicative of the things people think of in superhero movies that they don't like. Like, I could see people like you who have not even seen Iron Man thinking that they're all like this, you know? And that, I guess that's sort of the roundabout interesting point about this episode for us.
Yeah.
Is illustrating to you, I guess, the different sides of the superhero spectrum.
Yeah. I will say, too, I feel like Morbius is the first movie for me that's indicated that not all superhero movies are, like, immune from being shitty. You know, like, I had this idea, I still kind of have this belief that you can put something on a movie poster or, like, in a movie trailer or just talk about even casting choices that will generate so much interest that you're going to make close to $400-500 million in the first month, right? So it's like the movies will always make money, but this one did not do as successfully as it probably should have.
No, word of mouth killed it almost immediately.
Yeah.
But the hilarious part about it, we touched on this a little bit, is that there were so many memes about it online, like just covering the internet. The internet was plastered with Morbius memes, that Fox or whoever thought it was a great idea to re-release it in theaters.
Yeah.
And I think it made like $80,000. So it flopped fucking twice. It flopped twice.
Yeah.
They spent all the money to re-release it, not understanding that people are making fun of your movie. They're not going to go watch it. It's the internet. It's Reddit.
Exactly.
Because Reddit's making fun of something doesn't mean they're going to go watch it if you release it in theaters.
Right? Like, Morbin now is a term for pirating.
And we did
film.
not pay for this movie. I'm just going to say that. We did not pay to watch this.
Well, I morbed it. That's what people will say now. Morbin is what you do when you distribute pirated copies, apparently, of this film. And it's like, you played yourself, studio. Like, I don't know. I think it was Sony.
Yeah, Sony's attempts at superhero movies have been horrible. They had, they did the Amazing Spider-Man and Amazing Spider-Man 2, which was so awful that
With
they
Andrew
didn't even
Garfield.
get to make a third one. Yeah, it just like ended on the second one.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing Spider-Man 2 is one of the worst movies I've ever seen. It's
Man.
definitely up there. It is fucking awful. It is miserable. It's stupid. But I digress. They did the Venom movies. Like, they don't know what to do. They don't have someone at the helm. They don't have a Kevin Feige. I don't know what their problem is, but I hope Morbius is just the nail in the coffin and they stop trying.
Seriously.
No more Venom movies, please. I like Tom Hardy, but I'd like to see him in real movies, not this junk.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a big old superhero world, Alex. There are many shades of it.
Yeah.
We're definitely oversaturated. Like I said, I haven't watched any in quite some time until this one. But it's not all bad.
No.
And if a dickbag like me, who is so, contrary in their interests a lot of the time, and all the hoity-toity shit I talk on this show, if I can enjoy Marvel movies, so can you.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, Iron Man was a great way to start it, right? It got me excited about it.
Start at the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, superhero movies are here to stay for a little while, for sure. It'll be interesting to see if they ever have like a dying out, not like a dying out completely, just in waves. Like the interest just maybe isn't as huge, right?
I think it's not as huge right now. Just,
you think
I
so?
don't know.
I mean, that's true.
I don't know. I know that there are a lot of people like me who haven't watched anything since Endgame. It felt like the end,
Mm-hmm.
Downey's gone, Chris Evans is gone, and you're like, the core of it doesn't feel there. And there's like 6 movies after that I have yet to watch, and a lot of them are gotten kind of panned.
Yeah.
Black Widow, The Eternals.
Oh God,
I don't know anything about Shang-Chi. I guess people loved Spider-Man. It was like the highest grossing movie ever.
I think Eternals, or not Eternals. I think that I don't know. I feel like the sorry.
Yes,
Totally
Alex?
forgot what I was going to say. I have a rare blood disease. Makes me forget things. Sorry. I got bit by a sloth when I was a kid. So.
That actually makes sense. Yeah, those pauses.
Dude, they are my favorite animal. I like their pace. But that would be quite a superhero movie, right? Like some like
the sloth,
earthy granola doctor who's like just down in South America or something. It's just like a total hippie. Gets bit by a sloth or just like clawed by one.
Bit by a radioactive sloth.
Fuck.
Do you remember in Morbius when like apparently the whole bat thing is supposed to be a gigantic secret and she finds out about it?
Yeah, Bancroft.
And like
by the way,
it has this
name.
giant tank full of bats.
Yeah, from
and
Costa
it's supposed
Rica.
to be this big secret, and he like you just open a drawer and there's a bat in there.
Yeah,
like ready to be scienced. And then in the background you see like interns just like walking past, and it's supposed to be a secret. It's so fucking dumb. It's so lazy. It's so bad.
And it's funny because like I don't know, like they're trying to play up Michael Morbius as this like really pure and like nice dude, but it's like, dude, he stole these bats from their like native area.
He sucks. It's a bad character.
Yeah, it's just
no qualities one way or the other. He just exists. I don't know. All right, let's get out of here. We done? I think we're done. We're done talking about Morbius. We're done talking about Iron Man. We may do more Marvel down the line. We may not.
Yeah.
There's really, I don't know if there's much point. But we'll discuss that. Thanks for listening, everybody, to the Reel Weirdos podcast. 1.5 white men with English degrees talking about movies for way too goddamn long. And next episode, we will be talking about Everything, Everywhere, All at Once.
Yeah.
Which threatens to be a really good time.
It does. I'm really excited for that.
People are digging that movie. Oh, I was going to lead off with this, but we can do it at the end here. Rip in peace to Ray Liotta and Philip Baker Hall.
Oh, yeah. Definitely 2 people we have unfortunately not been able to address. Also, I want to throw out another one for Julie Cruz, who was a big-time collaborator with David Lynch, starred in some of the Twin Peaks work at the Roadhouse and everything. She would be singing. Really, really cool, like really dreamy, almost 1950s like Americana, but in like the 1980s mode and medium of instruments, not quite synthesizer 1950s music. But just check Julie Cruz out. She just passed away a few days ago, and it was hard to hear that for some reason. I don't know why, because she was like such an appreciated friend of David Lynch and is so well respected in the film community, even though she's a musician, that I don't know, that one hurt a little bit. But Ray Liotta, of course, man.
Yeah, Ray Liotta. It's funny.
And Hall.
The episode that came out right after he died, we actually made fun of him. We recorded it before he died, but we were talking about his performance in like The Name of the King, I think.
Which
or something. We were talking about something.
I don't take back in any way. We weren't speaking elephant.
No.
He's a great guy.
No.
I mean, he's a legend, right? He will always be an American cinema icon. Like, seeing him in Goodfellas is just, I don't know. That was the peak, baby, of American movies.
That was the peak. And Philip Baker Hall, if you don't know who that is, go watch Hard Eight.
Seriously.
Or Magnolia. Or Seinfeld. I guess he was a big character in Seinfeld.
Oh yeah, he was.
Big character actor.
He
was. A lot of bit parts, but Hard Eight is his like symphony.
Yeah.
If I could put it that way. That's his big one. But yeah, rip in peace to those guys. Hopefully we don't have to lose anyone else quite so soon.
Yeah.
But, you know, as with all things, we shall see. Once again, thanks for listening. Reel Weirdos podcast. We hope you're doing okay. Stay weird, stay good. Get the help you need if you need help. And we'll catch you all in the next one.
All right. Signing off for today.
Enjoy your apple teenies.
At 12:30.
At 12:30. Hey, they can listen to this anytime they want.
Yep.